Is your child's speech hard to understand? Do they use unusual patterns? Or do they sound younger than their age? If so, you're not alone. And in this episode, we're looking at speech sound disorders, phonological delays, and articulation challenges. But don't worry, we'll define all of those terms. And I'll help you also sort out what's developmental, what you might need to support, and how everyday play can support clearer speech without correcting every word. This episode is part of the series When Communication is Hard. And today, you hear part 3. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dinalynn Rosenbusch. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned. Because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. Welcome back. I've got a couple of announcements that are very exciting. The first one being that the language of play has now passed 50,000 downloads. That is something to celebrate, and I'm very excited about that. I hadn't really been keeping track as closely, and all of a sudden I realized, oh, it's 50,500. So that's kind of fun. The second thing I want to say is another little celebration. I have tried to navigate and have a website up, and I have been terrible about doing that job. But I want to announce that very soon, very, very soon, there will be a website that you can go to, and I am not going to link to it in the show notes yet, but I want you to get excited with me because it's going to be done very, very soon by the next episode. And those announcements are with the language of play. Now, you might remember it is February, and so we're honoring all month long the authors of children's books. So we are highlighting 5 special authors that have been featured on this podcast. And you can look in the show notes for Constance, Jason, Terry, Claire, and Rella. Last week, you heard me talk about the Bye to Burnout bundle for the homeschool moms, and tomorrow is the last day that those free resources will be available. It was a 5-day experience where you could access resources from a lot of experts, and I also contributed to that bundle, which is a Zoom call titled, Does My Homeschool Child Qualify for Speech Therapy? So if this interests you, go to the show notes and click on that free bundle, which is Bye to Burnout bundle for the homeschool moms. And you can get your questions answered because it will be a live Q&A for those that are interested. This is also the last day I'm going to be posting the trip to Costa Rica. If your family is interested in getting away, go to the show notes and check on that for huge savings just for being a listener on this podcast. Now let's get into the content of today's episode on speech sound disorders and phonological delays. This is part 3 of the series, When Communication is Hard. If you recall, I segmented out the various reasons why communication is hard, and we're looking at it by categorizing these issues in a different way than they're typically categorized. And I did this because how you help your kids is organized more cleanly this way. All right, we're going to dive right into it. So, how do kids learn speech sounds? I'm particularly excited about doing this episode because this is the most common area that parents notice something is going on with their kids. They notice, boy, my child is hard to understand. I also get excited about this because this is the area where when a parent dives in and decides to learn, and I coach parents, this is where we have remarkable and predictable, reliable, certain success. Parents are nearly guaranteed that your kids can make the change you want them to make in a very quick amount of time when you know the strategies to follow. So this is just particularly fun because when you're going to do something, if you see rapid and thorough success fast, it's so encouraging and it's really fun. It's fun to watch people celebrate, moms and kids. It's fun to celebrate with people as they see their own success and watch their own growth. And this is an area that it happens fast, it happens predictably, and you know the steps to do it. I sometimes find it comical that parents I work with come back to me and they say, I tried that thing you said and it worked. And I just kind of chuckle because, yeah, it does. For somebody that's trained in it, it's kind of like saying, I lifted the lever on the faucet and water came out. And a plumber is going to just nod and say, yeah, because it works. That's what it's meant to do. This isn't plumbing science, but I think you get the idea of what I'm saying. Once you know the science, it is obvious. And then when you don't know it, it's a mystery. All right, so how do kids learn speech sounds? We're going to define it as speech sound development is the gradual process of learning sounds. And that is when our kids, they babble, they play with sounds, they start to copy sounds, they get the rhythm and intonation of sounds, and ultimately, how those sounds work together to make words. Because it's not just how you say individual sounds, but it's how you link those sounds together to create words. So babies, of course, start with babbling. Toddlers are simplifying words naturally. For example, they might say nana for banana, and they might say tar for car, or ta for car. These simplifications are called phonological processes. It is expected and normal and right early on. Here's an aside. I know it's adorable when our kids say these cute mispronunciations. And while you smile and think it's cute, don't copy their mispronunciations. You delight in them, but then you always say it correctly because they're copying you. So that is a speech therapy nugget 101 and really important if you want your kids to catch on to clear speech. That growth happens while our kids hear and they compare sounds that they say and what you say and somebody else says. They refine the patterns as they keep listening. And it happens that way much, much better than it happens through correction. In fact, growth doesn't actually happen through correction. Growth happens because they're learning it, which is the hearing, comparing, and refining. So if your child is using patterns that made sense early, like my example with ta or tar for car or nana for banana, if your child is saying any of those kind of simplified patterns that were appropriate when they were young, but they haven't changed with time, that is worth paying attention to, and it is an indicator that you can step in early and help them hear and compare and refine those patterns by you saying the sounds correctly and well around them. So what is a speech sound disorder? A speech sound disorder is an umbrella term for ongoing difficulty producing speech sounds, and it requires intervention. Now that intervention can be done by a speech pathologist, and I always advocate that it can be done by parents too. You just need a little guidance. A speech sound disorder can include an articulation disorder, and that would be trouble with speech sounds, and we're going to delineate that in a little bit. It can be a phonological disorder, which is trouble with sound patterns, and I'll spell that out for you too in a little bit. And then motor speech disorders, and that would be trouble with coordination or movement. I talked about that in the entire last episode. So if you have a kiddo with motor speech disorders, like childhood apraxia of speech, go listen to episode 254 in this series, because that episode is exclusively about motor speech disorders. And then we're going to touch a little on speech differences related to hearing history and early ear infections, because that is just a little different than an articulation disorder or a phonological disorder, and it is not a motor speech disorder. Also today, we'll talk about the difference between a speech delay and a speech difference and the speech sound disorder, which I just defined. This can be particularly confusing for those of you that have kids in school getting speech services, because at least in my state, it is all classified under articulation disorder, which isn't exactly accurate, but our state criteria was created in 1992 and has never been updated, so it still has the same labels. So even if you have a motor speech disorder, the label that it will fall under is articulation disorder, because that was the umbrella term back in 1992. Now, before we go on, I want to make one thing really clear. When a child has a speech disorder of whatever kind, it is absolutely not about intelligence. It is not about them not putting in the effort, and it is definitely not your parenting. It is just about how your child is hearing, processing, understanding, and copying what they hear. And I want to repeat for emphasis that this is not a difference in intelligence, in effort, or in parenting. Now, each of us has an area we tend to nerd out on a little bit, and I'm right in my game here. I kind of nerd out on this, so I'm going to try to be as straightforward and linear as I can. Articulation disorders, what are they? So an articulation disorder happens when a child has a difficulty physically producing a specific sound, even when the sound pattern itself is understood. An example of an articulation disorder would be a lisp. A child might be saying that TH sound for an S. Maybe they have a distorted R, which would be O for R, cow, like instead of car, when they put a vowel in place of the R. Or they have trouble coordinating the lips and tongue. Maybe they're saying a T for a K, or maybe the letter P instead of an F. Really common articulation sound problems. The key characteristics is that the error is usually consistent. The child often knows the word is different, and other sounds are all intact, and a child might have more than one sound with these consistent errors. It's like knowing what you want to say, but your mouth hasn't learned how to make that one move yet. Fortunately, it is not hard to correct when you address it when kids are still young. This is an area that is really, really effective to teach moms and dads how to support your kiddos at home. Your success is nearly guaranteed. It is straightforward. You follow the steps. They make progress. That's how it goes. If you'd like to listen to a parent story talk about doing just this thing, you can listen to episode 154. I'll put that in the show notes. That child came at age 3 with only vowel sounds, and within 1 year was caught up to age level. Now let's talk about phonological disorders. That is when patterns get stuck. So a phonological disorder was my example of a child simplifying a whole word, and they regularly simplify the whole thing. Maybe they regularly and consistently shorten words, or stop all the airflow sounds, or produce all of the sounds in the front of their mouth and none in the back of their mouth. This is super common when a child is young and learning how to speak. But what happens is that the brain found the pattern early and it's stuck. It's like the little brain said, this is how it happens. And then they stayed in that stuck spot and they made a rule that their brain follows. And it's like the brain needs an update. So we need to get more patterns and get out of the patterns that they got into. Here are some common examples. One of them is leaving off ending sounds. So maybe the child says ka for cat. Maybe they're replacing the back sound for a front sound, and that would be tat. Maybe they say many words and they all sound alike. And you know what I mean if you have this going on. The key difference here from articulation is that the child can sometimes make the sound. They generally can make a lot of sounds, but they can't seem to keep it in the right place at the right time. The pattern is the problem, not the sound. Multiple sounds may be affected within patterns, and multiple patterns can co-occur. And what can make it particularly tricky is that if a child has multiple phonological patterns and they have articulation sound errors as well, then you might need some professional help to sort out what actually is going on. In my work as a speech pathologist, I kind of like the puzzle. It's fun. But for parents, it's generally not fun because it comes with so much worry. So to frame what a phonological issue is, it would be like saying it isn't a broken sound. It's about a rule the brain hasn't updated yet. The third speech sound disorder I'll mention, but that was the last episode, which is how the brain sends messages to the mouth, so motor speech disorders. And this isn't about learning the sound rules. It's about how the brain sends messages to the muscles and nerves in the mouth. In the last episode, we talked about childhood apraxia of speech and dysarthria in detail, and if that's something you're dealing with, that deserves its own episode. And there are different ways that we help our kids if you're dealing with a motor speech disorder or a phonological disorder or an articulation disorder. There are different ways that we deal with it. And I'm going to say, if your child has a delay or a difference, and they're not severe, it's mild, and you're thinking, well, this isn't something that qualifies for speech therapy, or maybe it's just kind of there and you're not quite sure, we treat it the same way. And you just do the methods, and voila, it works. And it works fast when kiddos, particularly when they have mild. What you might notice in a motor speech disorder is that the same word can sound different every time that it's said. And speech gets harder when the child gets tired, excited, or rushed. It's very inconsistent, and there's a lot of effort in just the act of speaking. Plus, there's typically a huge difference in how well a child can understand as compared to what they're able to give in speech output. The important distinction here is that the child is not choosing incorrect sounds. It's their system that struggles to coordinate them. This, too, is not related to intelligence. You might say, it isn't a stuck sound or a stuck rule. It's a stuck pathway between the brain and the mouth. All right, that's a lot, so let's make it simplified and summarized. Articulation issues have to do with individual sounds, consistently wrong, one movement problem. Phonological issues have to do with sound patterns that need updating. Motor speech issues are about planning and coordination. And now let's talk a little bit about how hearing differences related to hearing history impacts speech. Frequent ear infections or early hearing fluctuations can affect how clearly a child hears sound contrasts. And that is especially true with high-frequency sounds. That would be like F and S. Those sounds are high frequency. And quiet sounds like a T or a TH, or again the F and S, or ending sounds. Oftentimes ending sounds are also impacted. So what it shows up as is missing final consonants. So it looks like a pattern, like we talked about above, but it's related to hearing differences. And then it's inconsistent errors and difficulty noticing small sound differences. And the way that shows up is you have two words that are very similar, such as sat and hat, and the beginning sound in both of those words were airflow and quiet sounds, And it can be difficult for someone with hearing loss to pick up on the difference between those quieter sounds. It is important to note that even after hearing improves, speech patterns don't always correct themselves without support. And the reason is because our brains are pattern-making machines, and we want to figure out how something is done. We get into the pattern of automaticity. We automatically do it, and then we move on to learning the next thing. And this is the same for our kids that have been learning speech in the presence of hearing loss or on and off hearing. So a big idea from this episode is that speech sounds aren't learned one at a time and in isolation. They are learned in patterns, and kids normally move through those patterns smoothly. However, some kids get stuck, and when they get stuck, we go back to isolation. That means the sound by itself, and then we build that sound correctly into movements. So we match it with a vowel, we match it with other consonants, we build words. And this is where I want to teach you parents what you are to do exactly, what you can do that helps speech sounds. But before I go into that, I want to address those 5 core principles that we've talked about before. And the reason is because when a child comes to you with speech sound issues, and you go to your child with these speech sound issues, there's already a frustration level that's been brewing. It's been simmering. You may have some worry, some concern. You've tried to correct them. It didn't work. So you're frustrated. They feel your frustration. They've been trying to figure out what they're doing wrong. They can't figure it out. They're upset with themselves. Maybe they're angry with themselves or embarrassed. There's any number of things that can happen. And generally, if we get to our kiddos when they're really young, we get to bypass this. But if not, by the age of 3, kiddos are starting to feel these things. So before I give you the strategies to use, I want to go back to the 5 core principles that you need to remember every time you're about to do this kind of speech correction. Remember these things. Your child needs to feel accepted, that they're safe from demand. They're secure in your love. Most kiddos in this situation have that break in trust, and fear, shame, embarrassment, guilt, whatever, causes them to feel like they're flawed. Now, they don't have words for this, but they will react to it. So your job, moms and dads, first thing you do is you lower the pressure. Less demand means that they will communicate more. We build success before accuracy. That means when we see that they have cooperated, that is success. We see them try, that is success. Sometimes success simply means that they meet eye contact, that they stop staring at the floor in the presence of speech correction. Remember to support the whole child. Speech is connected to movement, energy, emotion, regulation. All of this builds trust. When we repeat, we want to do our practices joyfully and in real life and with meaning. And parents, you matter more than perfection. What you do every day matters. You have the ability to practice in drips all day long so that it's fun and it's accepting and it's full of love. And when you come about it that way, that is the foundation that what I'm going to say next builds on. Because if you don't do this, you don't have the glue that holds it together. It will not work if this piece is missing. So hear me again. Don't bother doing the strategies if you haven't taken the time on building the relationship stronger and building the trust part of it first. Even if you think your child already trusts you, and they do, in this area, they might have struggle. All right, now that we've addressed that very, very important piece, let's get on with the strategies that work, that really, really work. The first one I'm going to address is called auditory bombardment. Imagine that you were playing table tennis, and your opponent had 35 balls all coming at you at once. That's bombardment, right? So now we want to auditorily, that would be with the hearing system, we want to bombard the child's ears with the right sounds or the right patterns. It's like you're letting their little brain soak in the right sound. A sound that this works particularly good on is the R sound. So as you're reading a story to them, you're going to make that sound a little bit louder, a little bit slower, a little bit stronger. Just the way I said that word, stronger. It's just a little bit more. Kids are required to do nothing. They get to stand there and watch all those ping pong balls fly by. They can hit it back if they want to, but if they don't, it's okay too. That is the nature of auditory bombardment. The work is all yours, moms and dads. Your kids just get to be. And this is something you can do when your children are very small. So let's say you had older siblings, older children that had speech issues, and now you've got a young one. Pick the sounds that were particularly hard for the other children and bombard your little one just being a little louder, a little shorter, a little stronger with that one sound so that they hear it more clearly, more often. It just helps them to decipher, to differentiate. Another trick with that is to have the child listen to something right before they fall asleep, and their brain will work on it while they're sleeping, and you can get more bang for your buck. I used to record myself with sound-filled stories and send them home on recordings for my students so that they could listen right before they fell asleep. Number 2, contrast awareness. And that would be helping your kids notice the change that a sound has in a word that entirely changes the meaning. So that would be words like T and key. The difference, of course, is the letter T and the letter K, right, for sound. But can your child hear the difference? And ask your child, play a game. Is it the same or is it different? And just say many words that are one sound different. And then, of course, repeat words that are the same in the middle there so they can start telling same, different, same, different. Really good for their auditory training, training their ears to hear. Similar to this one is number 3, which is minimal pair exposure. What that means, minimal pair again, is that one sound difference. But now you're going to highlight the different meaning, such as cap and cat. And so you'll have a picture of a hat you put on your head, say cap, and then you show a picture of a cat. And they'll see the difference. So they have to say the difference. Bow versus boat. One has an ending sound and one doesn't. Playing with words and pictures where there's just one sound different and a meaning different is really helpful for our kiddos to hear and see together. Let's look at the 4th thing, and that would be sound-specific play routines. What that would be is, let's say that every time you play bear or car or something like that, you are going to have your boat or your animal grrr with a good just that real nasally ER sound, and that way that you get to auditory bombard at the same time as you are doing a play routine with them. So you're playing car, you don't get to have any different sounds. You just are doing the ER if your child is struggling to say R. And they get to say, of course, anything that they want to, and you are planting that sound in their ears. It works also if you're trying to get that child to say, let's say, an S sound. You are going to play on the slide, or maybe you've got snakes or bees or bugs or something like that, and you're going to make an S or a Z sound, whatever you're focused on. You, again, have to do it correctly, consistently, and your child is going to be noticing your mouth as different from theirs, and they will hear and see, but of course they're going to do whatever they do, and you are planting the right sounds with the right visual in their eyes and ears. Number 5, one sound at a time focus. So let's say your child needs the K sound, and you're going to have many words in your back pocket, so to speak, that start or end with that K sound. And that's the only thing you highlight during one sound at a time focus. You ignore every other sound. You're only focusing on that one sound. And you're letting your child know, I'm practicing this sound and you're putting it in front of their face, and hopefully they will start to copy you. But if they don't, it is okay. As we go along, then they will copy. Number 6 is expanded imitation. This would be when your child says ba, and the adult agrees and says ball. So you're adding one sound onto what your child says. Your child says ka, and you say yes, cup. Or your child says ba, and you say yes, you're taking a bath. So you can hear I'm adding just one piece onto what they're already doing. And then number 7 is called modeling without correction. And this is showing the correct version of whatever we're saying naturally, without telling the child that they're wrong. And why this matters is because it leans into that communication piece where communication is safe. It encourages our kids to take the risk. It builds trust and courage in speaking. And you'll notice that a lot of what I just said in these 7 steps, I did not require the child to copy. Of course, we want them to copy, and over time we want more and more copying. But the more important first thing to do is to build that trust in the relationship, that they feel that they can trust themselves and your reaction, them being wrong. In the core of it, the goal is being understood and not sounding perfect, because parents need to listen to the content of the message, not only how the message is given. So here and now, I am giving you permission to let go of constant correction. I give you permission to let go of anxiety over every error. Because once you start to see the errors, you're going to see more, and then more, and then more, and you're going to think, how did I never notice? So I give you permission to let go of that judgment and that anxiety, because we just deal with them one at a time, just like your kids learn everything else. And I give you permission to let go of comparison to other kids. Remember, clear communication grows faster in a calm and connected environment. Speech sound struggles are not a sign of laziness or defiance or lack of effort. They're not a sign of lower intelligence. They're a sign that the auditory system needs better input. It needs clearer contrast. It needs practice. And as parents, you do this through everyday moments, during play, maintaining the heart of the connection you have with your child. And that is the glue that makes it work. So your tip is practice does not always mean them speaking. Practice is also listening. It's noticing, and it's mentally rehearsing. And this is a foundational practice. And if your child is at this stage, the work is more yours than them. And you just need someone to show you what and how to apply the strategies that I just gave you to exactly what your child is doing right now. If today has caused you to realize that you want more support in this, be sure to communicate with me, because like I said at the beginning, this particular topic is super fun. Success is nearly guaranteed because you just learn how to apply it, you do it, and it's like magic, it happens. But it is a science. You're not expected to know it, and you can learn it. You can scroll down to the show notes and schedule a call with me, or you can email me at hello@thelanguageofplay.com, and I would be very happy to have a conversation on how you can get on board with exactly what your child needs next. Thank you for joining me today on The Language of Play. I hope you learned something new and felt encouraged. Happy Thursday! Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review, and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.